The dawn mist stuck to the jagged peaks of New Cascadia, twisting through the valleys like silver smoke. Marcus changed the settings on his respirator and crouched behind a group of rocks that were covered in frost. He kept his eyes on the movement ahead. A faint rustling sound gave away the presence of something living. The hatchling was there, partly hidden by the rocks. In the soft morning light, its scales sparkled a little. They were a mix of deep indigo and muted emerald. The creature's wings were folded tightly against its sides. They were still too small and weak to lift its weight. But even then, Marcus could see the hidden strength in its sinewy body. This dragon was not like any other. It was an anomaly. "Be careful," Lauren whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. With her tablet in hand, she crouched next to him and looked at the creature's vital signs from afar. It's scared and knows we're here. It could go back into hiding if anything moved quickly. Marcus shook his head. He had been following this baby bird for days, using the faint heat signatures it left behind as it moved through the thick forest. He felt a connection to it that he couldn't quite put into words. Maybe it was the way the little dragon's amber eyes sparkled with intelligence, or the way it turned its head when it saw him, as if it were judging him. Ree's voice came through his comlink in a soft way. "Outpost 37. Send a report." "Everything is fine so far," Marcus said, looking at the baby. "We found it. It's by itself and can't move. The development of the wing seems to be below average for its age. I suggest putting the person in a safe place for observation before trying to help." "Got it. Keep your eyes on each other. Don't get involved directly until Dr. Lowe gets here," Ree said. There was a hint of tension in her voice, but it was calm. Dragons weren't supposed to be this close to people, but there it was. A weak youngling wandering too close to the eastern edge. 10 minutes later, Dr. Lowe arrived. She was both commanding and calm. She looked at the baby bird through the lens of her monitoring device. "It's weak," she said, "but not too weak to live. Before I do anything, I want a full assessment. Everything, including muscle density, bone growth, and wing movement." Marcus let out a slow breath, being careful not to scare the creature. He had made a set of temporary harness wings, which were a mechanical way to help the hatchling's flight muscles, which were weak but full of potential. They were ready after weeks of calculations, design changes, and test runs. Lauren looked at him with an eyebrow raised. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" "I have to," Marcus said in a low but firm voice. "If we don't try, it might never work. And if it can't fly, it won't live long in the wild. Adult dragons are good at hunting. There's no room for weakness." Dr. Lowe nodded as he looked over the scans. "I'll keep an eye on all the vital signs while the harness is being put on. We can start when things are calm enough. Marcus, your knowledge of mechanical systems will be very important here. Accuracy is key." They carefully planned how to get to the hatchling. Marcus moved slowly and carefully, making sure that each step was measured so as not to scare the creature. Lauren had tentatively named Ember, and had watched them with wide, unblinking eyes and flared nostrils as it smelled the strange people. It was hard to attach. Small threads ran along the front edges of the fake wings to work with natural muscle memory. Marcus worked quietly, threading each strand with the skill of a surgeon. Ember shook but didn't fight back. The trust between the dragon and the mechanic grew slowly but surely. "There," Marcus whispered at last, stepping back. The harness was tight. Ember tried out stretching his wings, and a few tentative flaps made him wobble a little before he got his balance back. He moved in a clumsy way, but there was no denying that he had potential. Lauren clapped softly. "He's getting used to things very quickly. The support is helping muscle memory work well. This might work." Marcus smiled a little, but it was only for a second. But it made me feel uneasy. This was just the start. He had made a bridge between species, a mechanical solution to an evolutionary problem. But he didn't know how Ember would act in the wild or if the adult dragons would accept him. Dr. Lowe wrote down every detail as the hatchling practiced controlled lifts. She was so amazed that she didn't show it. "This integration is unheard of," she said softly. "The data alone will change how we think about how juvenile dragons grow up." Ember made a soft trill, a sound that Marcus had learned to connect with curiosity and agreement. The dragon's head tilted a little, as if to say, "I see you, humans. You're not a threat. You're helping me get stronger." The morning went by intense, watching with every twitch of scales and every tentative flap of wings carefully recorded. When the sun broke through the peaks and shone golden light on the frost-covered ground, Ember made a short, confident climb, hovered for a moment, and then landed gracefully. Marcus let out a breath, his heart racing in his chest. He said softly, "He's ready." But he knew the real test would come later, when the harness was completely taken off. Lauren lightly touched his shoulder. "You did well, Marcus. But keep in mind that he isn't ours. He wasn't ever. We just helped him figure things out." Marcus nodded. The hatchling, who was now looking at him with intelligence that went beyond instinct, kept his eyes on him. He felt a bittersweet ache in his chest. Ember would soon have to face the world by himself. And soon, Marcus would have to say goodbye. But for now, in the foggy dawn of New Cascadia, a young dragon practiced the first tentative flaps that would one day take him to places where no human had ever flown. As Marcus tightened Ember's delicate harness again, the morning fog hung over the eastern cliffs. The young dragon had trouble sleeping, even in the safe space they had made for him in the observation hangar. It was clear that his mind was busy with questions, worries, and maybe even a little bit of confusion. Marcus couldn't blame him. It was a lot to take in all at once, when you suddenly had to rely on foreign mechanical parts. "Are you ready?" Lauren asked, looking closely at the numbers on her tablet. Since the day Ember was found, she had been keeping an eye on his heart rate, breathing, and wing muscle contractions. Each rise and fall told a story that Marcus had learned to read well. Marcus took a deep breath. Ready, the baby bird raised its head and flared its nostrils. His wings shook nervously as they tested the fake filaments. Marcus knelt down and kept his hands close, but didn't touch Ember. She had to trust him, not be forced to. "It's okay, little one," he said softly. "You've done this before. You know how it goes." Ember made a soft trill, and the sound went up and down in pitch like a melody that wasn't sure what to do. It seemed like he got what Marcus was saying and why he said it. Marcus's chest felt tight. He had never thought that a machine, feathers a filament, and human hands could make such a strong connection. But here they were, working together in peace. Lauren kept a close eye on the Vittles. The contractions in his wing muscles are a little stronger than they were yesterday. He's getting used to it. But we need to make sure he doesn't overdo it. Dr. Lowe moved closer and fixed her glasses. We're past the first stage of survival. Now it's time to train. Before we think about taking off the harness completely, he needs to be able to last, be precise, and work together. And if the adult dragons show up during this time, her voice faded away. No one could guess how Ember's own kind would react to a young person who had been changed by a human. Marcus leaned forward, spread his wings wide, and flexed his muscles as he followed Ember's gaze. The hatchling squatted down a little to see how strong he was against the harness. Marcus let out a slow breath and spoke at the same time as Ember moved. He said softly, "Lift." Ember's wings beat once, twice, then slowed down a little before speeding up again. The rhythm got steadier and more sure of itself. Lauren's fingers moved quickly over her tablet. The integration of the filaments with natural muscle memory is working better than we thought it would. He seems to be learning from the harness itself. Marcus frowned as he thought about it. That's a risk. If he starts to depend on, Dr. Lowe said, "Don't worry, we planned for it to gradually go away. As his muscles get stronger, the support gets less. He should be able to fly on his own by the time we take off the harness completely." The next hour went by in a delicate dance. Ember climbed in small loops, landing carefully each time and instinctively balancing his tail. Marcus changed the tension on a few filaments here and there, whispering words of encouragement. "That's it, ... double quotes. Feel the wind and use your muscles." The hatchling made a trill that seemed to show it understood. Suddenly, a sharp trill came from the eastern cliffs. It was clear and strong. Ember stopped flapping his wings and opened his nostrils as he looked out at the horizon. Marcus got stiff. Adult dragon calls. The sound was deep and resonant, and it moved through the air in ways that no person could copy. "Stay calm," Marcus said softly, even though his hands were shaking. Ember's eyes followed a group of 5 huge shapes coming from the northeast. They were cutting through the fog with their wings wide and steady. "Dragons that are adults," Lauren said in a low voice. "They've never been this close to the outpost before." Ember paused, her wings shaking. He turned his head toward Marcus, giving him a look that said, "What?" Marcus knelt down, keeping his body low and not threatening. "It's okay," he said. They're your kind. They won't hurt you." The young dragon climbed carefully, testing the harness while the adults watched. Every beat of his wings became more sure, and his movements were smooth. The adult dragons flew around him in a circle, keeping a protective barrier around him. Their sharp eyes watched every flap and every change. Dr. Lowe frantically changed the settings on her scanner. Muscle coordination is perfect, and the heart rate is high but stable. He is acting like the harness doesn't exist. When he gets social cues from his species, this has never happened before. Marcus's heart raced when Ember landed for a short time and then jumped into a controlled dive. He was practicing recovery techniques that he had never seen in a hatchling so young. The adults reacted in small ways to each move. They nodded their heads, changed the position of their wings, or realigned themselves to protect themselves. Ember seemed to understand what they were saying without words. Lauren looked at Marcus with wide eyes. He's learning from them. Even with the harness on, he's still reacting to their signals without thinking. Do you know what this means? Marcus swallowed hard. It means he's connecting to worlds, people, and dragons. His voice was almost respectful. Marcus saw a pattern as the training went on. Ember was using the harness less and less to help him, and more to give him confidence. He only used it to see how strong he was during the harder moves. By the middle of the afternoon, the young dragon had lifted itself almost 10 meters, without any help, and hovered before landing gracefully. Marcus let out a sigh of relief. Lauren and Dr. Lowe looked at each other. Dr. Lowe said carefully, "If we keep this up, he could be ready for the first flight without supervision in a few days. But we need to think about things that could be bad for the environment, like wind currents, predator species, and even changes in the terrain. Before taking off the harness, all factors must be taken into account." Marcus nodded and started to think about where he could let go. The cliffs on the eastern edge were both secluded and close to places where adult dragons could hunt. Ember could watch, talk to, and eventually join in. Yes, it was dangerous, but it had to be done. Ember chirped softly and slowly stretched out her wings. Marcus walked up slowly and knelt down next to him. He whispered, "You're doing great, Ember. Pretty soon you'll be flying without me. But for now, we're learning as a group." The dragon's amber eyes met Marcus's. They were smart, trusting, and unblinking. Marcus hadn't expected that look to carry so much weight recognition, thanks, and even a little bit of pride. Their relationship had grown beyond that of caretaker and hatchling. It was a fragile trust built on hard work, planning, and quiet patience. As the sun went down and long shadows fell across the hangar, Marcus carefully took one side of the filament harness off. Ember tilted his wings to see how they felt with the new freedom. At first, the lift was shaky, but he quickly got used to it and flapped with such confidence that Marcus couldn't breathe. Lauren paid close attention. He's not just getting used to it, he's getting better. Every minute he is exposed to it without help makes him much stronger. This is more than what any model predicted, Dr. Lowe nodded. We're seeing natural development happen faster because of smart mechanical support. If Central Authority gets this information, it could completely change the rules for young dragons. Marcus bent down, his hand hovering over Ember's shoulder. Tomorrow, we'll try the other side. You won't need any of this soon. You will be ready to join your kind, and you will be free. Ember softly chirped and nudged Marcus's hand with his snout, a clear sign that he understood. The young dragon was learning how to trust, how to be strong, and most importantly, how to see that people could be friends instead of enemies. At the end of the first day of training, Ember sat on a high ledge in the hangar with her wings folded neatly and her eyes scanning the horizon. Marcus, Lauren, and Dr. Lowe stepped back to give him some space to think in silence. As the sun set over New Cascadia, Marcus took a moment to think. He began this day as a mechanic with a problem, a weak hatchling. He ended it as a part of something much bigger, the awakening of a creature who would soon bring together two intelligent species with the help of trust, compassion, and a carefully planned mechanical solution. And somewhere in the darkening sky, the first echoes of adult dragon calls could be heard faintly over the peaks. This reminded everyone that Ember's journey had only just begun. Marcus, Lauren, and Dr. Lowe got to the eastern cliffside just after the sun came up. Marcus was carrying Ember in his reinforced transport container. The morning mist hung on the jagged rocks, making a ghostly veil over the forest below. Today was not the same. It wasn't about training in the controlled hangar environment today. Today, Ember would be outside in the wilds of New Cascadia, where the currents are unpredictable, and she would have her first taste of freedom away from the safety of human-made structures. Marcus carefully put the container down. The clear walls let Ember see the cliffs and the valley below. The hatchling looked out and sniffed the wind, his nostrils flaring. The faint smell of pine, wet earth, and water far away hinted at something new freedom, big and wild. "Are you ready for this, little guy?" Marcus asked softly, bending down to look Ember in the eye. The dragon made a soft trill, which Marcus had learned to mean yes. It was a mix of curiosity and nervous excitement. Lauren checked the devices she had put on Ember to keep an eye on her. Everything is working well. His heart rate is steady. The contractions of his wing muscles are normal, and his stress levels are low. He's set. Dr. Lowe stepped closer with a tablet in hand to do one last check on Ember's vital signs. "Remember," she said softly, "he might not do well at first. You can't count on the wind to blow in a certain way. He needs to find his own way to balance. Don't get involved unless you have to." Marcus nodded his head. He had prepared for this moment just as much as Ember had. Going over in his head all the possible scenarios, figuring out wind shear, possible landing zones, and even the patterns of adult dragon patrols in the area, but no simulation could fully prepare them. It was always hard to know what would happen when they jumped into the open air for the first time. Ember moved a little in the container, and her wings pushed against the restraints. Marcus opened the top and stepped back to give him room. The baby turtle hesitated, its tail twitching nervously, before slowly climbing up the side of the crate. The wind messed up his scales, so he instinctively spread his wings. They bent naturally, as if their muscles had been programmed to respond to the currents. As Ember crouched down a little and braced her wings, Marcus and Lauren held their breath. He pushed himself into the air with a strong push of his legs. Nothing happened for a heartbeat. Then his wings started to beat, first in a clumsy way and then in a steady way. They caught a rising thermal that lifted him above the edge of the cliff. Marcus's heart skipped a beat at the same time as the hatchling's wings did. Ember stumbled once and tilted to the side, but then he quickly fixed it by changing the angle of his tail and wings. Lauren let out a gasp. "He's doing it. He's really flying." Dr. Lowe tapped her tablet frantically to record every piece of information. Coordination of the wings is perfect. Muscle memory is perfectly making up for natural aerodynamic forces. This goes beyond predictive models. Ember flew in circles, gaining height and slicing through the cold morning air with her wings. The forest below went on forever, a sea of green with rivers and rocky outcrops. The hatchling made a loud, confident sound that echoed off the cliffs. Marcus could almost hear the pride in it, which was a mix of happiness and victory. Out of nowhere, a deep, resonant trill echoed through the valley. Marcus knew the tone right away. Dragons that are grown up. Ember stopped in the middle of a beat, wings outstretched and head up. The noise came back, this time closer. Marcus let out a slow breath. This was the time they had all been afraid of and looking forward to. The first time he met another of his kind in the wild. 5 huge shapes with wide, strong wings came out of the fog. Adult dragons moved with ease and grace, circling Ember as if they were judging him. Marcus's stomach got tight. Any doubt or mistake could lead to disaster. Ember turned his head and looked back at Marcus. His amber eyes asked a question without saying a word. Marcus knelt down and raised his arms a little. "It's fine. They are your family. Go ahead." The hatchling stopped for a second. Then he beat his wings harder with a determined chirp and flew higher to meet the adults. They formed a protective ring around him, and Ember responded by moving through their formation with surprising speed. Lauren whispered in awe, "He's being accepted. They are letting him join them." Dr. Lowe shook her head in disbelief. "The harness hasn't made it harder for him to fit in with others. He's talking in dragon terms, and they get it." Marcus felt a rush of pride and relief. Ember's flight was more than just physical. It was also social, emotional, and instinctive. He had not only survived, but he was doing well. The hatchling did a lot of hard moves that pushed the limits of his strength and coordination. Every loop, dive, and barrel roll made the adult dragons react in small ways, like nodding their heads, changing their formation, or even swooping in to protect Ember when she got too close to the edge of the cliff. Marcus knew that the young dragon was learning a lot more from these interactions than he could have ever taught him. Lauren changed the settings on her binoculars. Look how carefully he moves. He knows how they will react. This is a very advanced way of changing behavior. Much more than we thought a young person could do. He is learning about more than just flying. Ember hovered for a moment, then dove in a wide arc, flying lower over Marcus and the others. In the sun, his scales shone like a changing mosaic of indigo, emerald, and gold flecks. He went around once as if to say, "I see you," before getting up to meet the adults again. Marcus had a lump in his throat. That short display was more than thanks. It was a way for two species that had rarely, if ever, met in mutual understanding to connect. The adults and Ember climbed up together, with the young dragon safely in the middle of the formation. Marcus watched until the morning mist covered the shapes, leaving behind only the memory of their passage and the faint echo of their calls. Lauren looked at Marcus with bright eyes. "Did you see that? He isn't just getting by, he's thriving and integrating." Marcus nodded, even though his throat was tight. "He wanted us to see it," he said quietly. "Not just that he can fly, but that he is a part of it." Dr. Lowe, always the scientist, finally let out a breath. "This changes everything. If teens can adapt to our interventions without slowing down their natural growth, it means we need to rethink how different species interact and how teens grow up." Marcus looked one last time at the cliffs, valleys, and empty sky where Ember had gone. He whispered, "This is just the beginning. He'll be free one day, and maybe, just maybe, he'll come back on his own terms to show us what he's learned." Lauren smiled and put a hand on his shoulder, "And when he does, we'll be here to see it." The three of them stood in silence for a long time, taking in the vastness of the new Cascadia wilderness, the beauty of a baby dragon taking flight, and the delicate, amazing bond between humans and dragons. It was a time of victory, amazement, and deep, unspoken hope. As they got ready to go back to the outpost, Marcus looked back one last time, half expecting to see Ember's small body moving through the clouds. The sky was still empty, but he knew for sure that the dragon had taken his freedom, and that things would never be the same again. The days after Ember's first flight outside the hangar were full of a tense mix of excitement and worry. Marcus woke up before dawn, restless, unable to get the images of Ember circling in the mist out of his head. Her wings cut through the air with new power. Lauren and Dr. Lowe were both full of excitement as they looked over data and flight recordings, looking at every wing beat, every tiny change in muscle tension, and even small changes in heartbeat. "It's like he's changing the rules for how young dragons grow," Lauren said one morning, her eyes glued to her monitor as Ember's mid-air moves played over and over. "He's getting stronger and more accurate with each flight. He is going above and beyond what we thought he would." Marcus leaned back in his chair and ran a hand through his hair. "That's great. But what if we go too far with him? What if we've taught him how to do things that aren't natural for him to do in the long run? We were in charge in the hangar. I mean, there are predators, weather, and terrain outside. He may be safe with the adults, but that doesn't mean he's invincible." He and Dr. Lowe looked at each other. "Marcus, we had a good reason to step in, but nature is still a strong force. He is getting used to it. He is stronger than any baby bird we have ever measured. That's not just engineering. That's using your instincts and creativity." Marcus felt a nagging tension, even though they tried to calm him down. As Ember got closer to being independent, the bond between humans and dragons felt weaker. He had spent a lot of time carefully planning the training wings, showing Ember how to fly, and keeping an eye on every stage of muscle growth. He had fought for freedom, but now that bond of trust and daily interaction was in danger of being broken. As the team got ready for Ember's next flight test, the morning air smelled like pine and wet soil. Marcus chose to let them explore a larger area of the cliffs than the day before. This included going over the steep canyon where the thermal winds were strongest. The plan was simple. Follow him, watch how he interacts with the currents and animals, and only step in if it was absolutely necessary. Ember came out of his transport container with the usual cautious excitement as they got closer to the launch point. His wings moved on their own, catching the wind, and he chirped in a high, excited trill that Marcus had learned to recognize as a mix of curiosity and readiness. "Okay," Marcus said softly as he knelt down. "You can do this, Ember. Just keep in mind what you've learned." Ember shot into the air with a strong push. He took his first few beats carefully and measuredly as he looked down at the ground. Then he went into the canyon's wind currents and expertly tilted to ride the rising air. As Marcus watched the young dragon move through the invisible rivers of wind with grace and speed that were far beyond what he had expected, his heart raced. "Look at him," Lauren said, breathing heavily and looking through binoculars at Ember. "He's automatically making up for the turbulence. He learns faster than any other young person we've ever seen." But the test was about to get harder. A pair of large shapes appeared from the dark cliffs on the other side of the canyon. They were adult dragons that the team had never seen before, and they were moving together. Ember's ears perked up, and his head tilted as he heard them coming. There was no doubt about it. "Not part of his group," Dr. Lowe whispered as he looked over the data. "Maybe adults who are territorial. This might be dangerous." Ember stopped in the middle of his flight and beat his wings hard as he looked at the new people. Marcus's hands started to clench. He wanted to shout and step in, but Lauren's hand on his shoulder reminded him that he shouldn't do anything unless he had to. This was a test of Ember's independence and a part of his education. The bigger dragons flew around, pushing the limits. Ember's chirps turned into a series of fast, high-pitched notes that Marcus had never heard before. The adults answered with low, resonant trills. For a tense moment, the young dragon faltered and fell several meters before regaining lift. Lauren said, "Stay calm. He knows what he's doing." Marcus's eyes got bigger when he saw Ember make a daring move by banking sharply through a small space between two jagged cliffs. The adults followed, and for a brief, heart-stopping moment, it looked like Ember might lose. But then, instinct and training came together. He spiraled up, flaring his wings and tail, which made the adults join him in a coordinated aerial dance instead of fighting. "It's amazing," Dr. Lowe said quietly. He's not fighting. He's mediating. He's becoming a part of how they act." The adult dragons moved around Ember as he made his way through the canyon, forming a loose, protective circle around him. Marcus felt proud and relieved as his chest tightened. The baby dragon was not only flying well, but it was also showing social intelligence by understanding dragon hierarchies and how to talk to other dragons in ways that humans had not expected. After what seemed like forever, Ember's group of adult dragons began to break up. The new dragons flew away and vanished into the morning mist. Ember hovered for a moment, wings beating steadily, and then fell toward Marcus and the others. Marcus let out a slow breath and stroked Ember's back as she landed gracefully. He whispered, "You did it! You did a great job with that!" Ember chirped softly and leaned into Marcus's touch. Then he raised his head and looked out at the horizon. Marcus got it. The baby bird wasn't looking for comfort. He was watching, learning, and planning his next flight. Ember had learned the lesson and come out of it stronger, more confident, and more aware of other people. Lauren wrote down notes quickly. His stress markers were high during the encounter, but went back to normal right away. He can bounce back. He's changing emotionally as well as physically. Dr. Lowe changed the settings on her tablet, and we learned something very important. The temporary human intervention didn't stop him from acting on his instincts. It made it easier for him to deal with difficult social situations and problems in the environment. That is a big deal. Marcus smiled a little, but he still felt sad. The young dragon he had cared for, taught, and protected was now completely on its own. Every time those wings beat, they took him farther away from people and the hangar where their journey together began. "Tomorrow, we'll make his flight area bigger again," Marcus said quietly as he watched Ember stretch his wings against the wind. "We'll keep an eye on him and track his vitals, but we'll back off more. He needs some room. He needs to be free." Ember chirped once, loudly, and then flew into the air, her wings cutting through the dawn light with ease. Marcus and the team followed from a distance, watching as he climbed, turned, and briefly disappeared into the mist before reappearing and doing complicated moves that looked like they were for fun. Lauren spoke in a soft, respectful voice. "He's not just flying. He's saying something. This is more than just surviving. This is ... happiness." Marcus felt something in his throat. He said in a low voice, "He deserves this. Every second we spent, every design, every change. It was all for this. For him to be free." The morning went by in a blur of watching, writing down notes, and thinking quietly. Ember flew over the cliffs, the canyon, and the forests below, getting more and more sure of herself with each flight. And with every flap of his wings, Marcus understood something deep. The hatchling was no longer just a project or a test subject. Ember had become a bridge between worlds, proof of how well human creativity and natural instinct can work together. As the sun rose higher and bathed the valley in golden light, Marcus, Lauren, and Dr. Lowe packed up their gear and started the long walk back to the outpost. Marcus looked back once, hoping to see Ember's shiny scales. But the young dragon was already lost in the clouds and faraway mountains. He felt a strange mix of pride and longing. Pride for Ember's victory, and longing for the friends he had made during so many weeks of secret work. Dr. Lowe spoke up. "Tomorrow, we go even further. And then, in the end, he will fly all by himself." Marcus nodded, knowing what was going to happen. The most important thing to Ember was being independent. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Ember's flight, his choices, and his interactions with his kind would change everything people thought they knew about dragons, intelligence, and freedom. For now, all they could do was watch, wait, and be amazed by the young dragon who had taken his first brave steps, or, more accurately, beats into the huge, unpredictable world outside the hangar. The air in the morning was cool and smelled like pine and the mist that hung over the jagged peaks of New Cascadia. Marcus, Lauren, and Dr. Lowe got to the eastern edge long before sunrise. Their transport containers were empty now, except for the memory of Ember's earlier flights. Today was the end of weeks of secret work. It was the day that would decide if Ember would really take his place among his own kind. Marcus changed the settings on his tablet to look at the most recent telemetry data. Ember's health over the past few flights had been great. Muscle tone, wing articulation, and cardiovascular endurance were all much better than what is normal for wild juveniles. But there was more at stake than just numbers. The social integration with adult dragons had been good, but not always predictable. Marcus felt a familiar knot form in his chest. "Remember," Lauren whispered, her voice soft but firm. "No interference unless it's absolutely necessary. This is his world now, not ours." Marcus nodded, but the urge to step forward and guide Ember with his hands wouldn't go away. He had spent hours designing, watching, and caring for things. Now, that link had to change from guidance to trust that Ember had learned enough to live on his own. The first light of dawn broke through the fog and painted the rocky outcropping in shades of gold and violet. Marcus knelt down and touched Ember's shimmering scales with his fingers as the young dragon stretched his wings, carefully testing each muscle group. Ember chirped, a sound Marcus had learned to mean a mix of excitement and recognition. "Are you ready?" Marcus said softly. Ember answered with a trill and a small jump, pushing off the ground and catching the morning wind perfectly. Marcus's heart raced. Every time the bird flapped its wings, it reminded me of how hard it is to find the right balance between helping and letting go, between human creativity and natural instinct. They stayed behind Ember, following her along the tree line as she climbed and confidently circled the peaks. Then, from the northeast, a series of loud, sharp calls echoed. The group came quickly, 10, then 15 dragons of different sizes, their scales shining in the rising sun. Dr. Lowe said, "He's not alone," his voice full of awe. "They're answering him, the kids, the adults, they're all coming to see him." Ember stopped in the middle of the flight, tilted her head, and listened. His chirps got faster, and Marcus could only understand them emotionally. Excitement, recognition, and maybe even a feeling of being together again. The young dragon hovered for a moment, its wings beating steadily as it looked down at the people below. Marcus felt both proud and sad at the same time. They had a strong bond, but Ember's world was now out of reach for people. The bigger dragons made a loose circle around Ember, both to protect her and to be interested. The young dragon did a series of aerial moves like spinning, diving, and climbing to show off his agility, strength, and learned mastery. As Ember made a very daring turn through a narrow canyon, Marcus's breath caught. Just as an adult swept past in a synchronized movement, Ember banked sharply. Lauren whispered, "They're recognizing him," her eyes sparkling with tears. "People are accepting him." Ember's smaller body darted between the giants, and his tail moved in time with each beat of his wings. The adults moved together perfectly, creating a living dance of light and shadow against the morning sky. Marcus's heart swelled as he watched the young dragon get more and more sure of itself with each pass. Finally, Ember broke away from the formation for a short time and did a high looping dive right over Marcus and the team. The dragon hovered for a moment, its eyes locked on Marcus's. Its scales shone in shades of indigo and emerald as the sun hit them. The trill he made was rich and layered, with thanks, recognition, and goodbye all mixed together in one strong note. Marcus fell to his knees, feeling overwhelmed. He whispered, "Goodbye, Ember. Fly free, little one. Show them what we've shown you." The young dragon flew up and joined the group again. They went up into the mist together, and the shapes of the adult and young dragons faded into the morning mist. Marcus, Lauren, and Dr. Lowe stayed on the rocky outcropping, the wind blowing on their faces. They felt both loss and victory in their hearts. As they turned back toward the outpost, they heard Commander Briggs' voice crackle over the radio. "You're good to go." Reports from the survey team say that there has never been so much dragon activity near the eastern edge, recording all of the observational data. Get ready for the official debrief. Lauren's eyes shone with joy. This is more than we ever hoped for. They're not just getting by, they're doing well and choosing to be around people. Dr. Lowe looked at the raw data on her tablet. If the Central Authority sees this, they will push for a whole research program here. We have made a big change in the way things work. Marcus smiled to himself for a moment. Ember's freedom had not only accomplished their personal goal, but it also had the potential to change the way people think about how dragons act. But he still felt the personal loss, the empty space where a constant, lively presence had been. New Cascadia got used to its new reality over the course of weeks. There were a lot more reports of people seeing dragons. Young dragons were exploring human territory, sometimes by themselves and sometimes in small groups. Researchers were eager to move to the outpost because they were so interested in Ember and the dragon's strange social behavior. Marcus kept working in the hangar, but the beat had changed. The quiet times by the observation deck, when they waited for the dawn mist to reveal the glimmer of indigo and emerald scales, became sacred rituals. Ember came back from time to time, sometimes alone and sometimes with friends, kids, and even adults who seemed to trust the human settlement. Every visit was short, but they were full of silent communication, acknowledgement, respect, and maybe a memory of the human hands that had once guided him. On one morning, Marcus stood on the observation deck with Lauren next to him. Ember showed up alone this time and did a perfect barrel roll before turning back toward the peaks. "Look at him," Marcus said quietly to himself, almost fully grown, but still free and independent. Lauren smiled gently. "Marcus, he's not just flying, he is a teacher. In a world with humans, he is changing what it means to be a dragon with every move and every interaction." Marcus nodded, and the wind took his words away. At that moment, he realized that Ember's journey was no longer about getting help from people. It was about a species finding its place, about freedom, trust, and the deep bond that could exist between worlds. As the sun rose higher and cast golden light over the valley, Ember's call echoed again. It was a soaring cry that echoed through the mountains, a song of victory, freedom, and an unbreakable spirit. Marcus, Lauren, Dr. Lowe, and even Commander Briggs all stopped and let the sound wash over them. It was a reminder that sometimes the best things in life are not the ones we can control, but the ones that let us fly. Ember disappeared into the mist, leaving behind the memory of scales shining in the sun, wings spreading wide, and a story that would change how people thought about dragons forever. Marcus smiled, but his eyes were watery. He said softly, "We did right by him, and somehow, ... he did right by us too." The outpost slowly got back to normal, but the bond that had formed during those secret weeks stayed strong. It was a bond between human creativity and the ancient wild world of dragons. And up above the peaks of New Cascadia, a dragon with indigo and emerald scales flew, carrying the lessons, thanks, and freedom that Marcus and his team had given him. It was a living bridge between worlds and a symbol of what kindness, bravery, and creativity could do.